Welcome to episode 88 of the Broadway Shuffle with Clayton and Zyler. I am Brennan. We are missing our fourth co-host, Conrad Mills, tonight, but we will make do with three. Hey, listen, if this is your first time or if you're a regular at the Broadway Shuffle, we check out our analytics and we've noticed that 53% of you have not subscribed on YouTube. So if you're a regular to the show and you like watching us, if you would do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. If you're new and want up-to-date Red Raider news, also hit that subscribe button and make sure to like this video. It helps us out tremendously and we really appreciate it. We'll do all we can on our end to make sure this is the best show possible. Tonight, we are going to get into the defensive line for Texas Tech. We're going to continue our position preview series. This defensive line has been arguably one of the most discussed position groups for the Red Raiders. It was one of the biggest emphasis in the transfer portal haul that you had in December. So lots to get into, a lot of talent added. Z, it feels like, we're already 6 months from December. We're coming right up to the season. I'm like almost forgetting how much talent we had added to this front. And with PFF recently releasing their top 5 defensive lines in all of college football, and it looked like a misprint to see Texas Tech at number 3, something we are not accustomed to seeing. This is going to be a heavily looked at group coming into the summer, but also into what will transpire for them in the fall. Get us into who we added, who's on this roster, the talent that we've added. Give us a refresher on what the defensive line is going to look like for Texas Tech in 2025.
Yeah, it's going to look almost entirely different. We were out on vacation this past weekend, and I came back in. We were having a good time. I said, let's throw on something on the TV. And so I threw on the Texas Tech versus West Virginia game, as most normal people do. And they rolled out the starting lineups, and it was James Hansen and Trayvon McAlpin. I promise you those will not be the starting linemen rolling out there for our first game in the 2025 season. The front 4 that you have is going to be entirely new. On the interior, you're going to be looking at Lee Hunter. He was a second-team All-Big 12 player for UCF last season. He, absolute monster. He's had 45 tackles last season, 19 solo stops. He was 7th on the team for total tackles as a nose tackle, 27 total pressures, which ranks 2nd among interior linemen in the Big 12. Really, really good player. He's going to be kind of the heart of that interior defensive line. Huge player. He'll be not backed up, but he'll be flanked by Skylar Gill-Howard. He's a Northern Illinois transfer. He was part of that team that beat Notre Dame this past season. Really, really good player. Stats don't necessarily tell the story here. He's a very, very solid player. One of the best at pass rushing as far as interior defensive tackles go, and you've got to be very explosive to do that. 10th in the FBS among interior defensive linemen at his pass rush grade. So those will be the interior guys. Those are brand new players. On the edge, you'll have Romello Height. He's a Georgia Tech transfer, really explosive pass rusher, very quick, kind of built the stereotypical college build, and then kind of the star of the class, probably the most highly rated and odds-on favorite to be the highest drafted player for Texas Tech this year. David Bailey comes in from Stanford. He posted the highest pass rush grade for any defensive edge player in the country last year, almost a 30% win rate on his pass rush snaps. Very explosive player. He sits at like 6'3", 250-ish, 260-ish, somewhere in there, depends on what you're looking at. But those would be the 4 starting guys that you have. Now, the backups, we can get into that a little bit later, but it's a star-studded group. It's going to look very different than last year. Clayton,
I think you're muted, Brennan.
Oh, hey. Sorry, guys.
Hey,
I was muted.
Welcome.
I'm back. I did not mean to do that. Clay, I know that y'all did the episode on the offensive line that, in the title, it starts in the trenches, and it was talking about the offense, and there were additions there as well. But defensive line was a heavy portal, obviously, need coming into this season. It was at times last year, and really in memory, outside of really Tyree Wilson, there has not been some dominant pass rush, and there has not been some physical interior line guys. You had Broderick Washington. Some of these guys come to mind in the past, but this group has a potential to be not only the best in the conference, but according to PFF and some of these ESPN analytic metrics, one of the best in the country. And if that's able to happen this year, look out, right? What are your expectations for this group, and maybe which player are you most excited to see come the end of August?
Yeah, I think, as far as expectations, I think it needs to be at the very top of the Big 12, if not the very best. And I think this will be kind of like the anchor for your entire team and your team strength, especially on defense. I think it's really hard to deal with a college defensive line that is just, as good as and as talented as this one. You mentioned Tyree Wilson, and we definitely had some good lines when he was here, because I think he played at the same time as Bradford and Hutchings too, right?
Mhm.
So that was probably the most like solid defensive line you had. But just in terms of like sheer talent, this one I feel like is even on a different level. Other than Tyree Wilson himself. But usually, a college offensive line can't deal with four guys who can rush the passer. So I expect honestly that our defensive line will like not single-handedly, but like be the main reason that we win a couple games this season. Like if we face a bad O line, I think they could just completely wreck the other team's game plan. So really excited to see like what this line can do for us this year.
Yeah, one of the things, and you think about last year, you lost Adedire and you lost Spencer before the year even started, and then you lost Smith really early, and then you lost Duda Banks, and then you lost, who was the other edge rusher that I'm forgetting? But you lost so many guys on that line last year. It's going to look completely different. Now, you've got some returners. Duda Banks was fully cleared by June, which is crazy to already be fully cleared by that point. So he'll be one of the interior guys, and that's a great dude if he's coming off the bench. You'll also have Anthony Holmes. He's a Houston transfer, another really highly rated guy. You'll also have Jaden Cofield, a Cedar Hill product that's really good, big, 6 foot, 300 something pounds. And then you'll have Nathan Tillman on the edge, Charles Esters on the edge, Cheeto Philly on the edge. You're going to have some guys backing them up. I think, oddly, and this is not something that most teams, I think you're way deeper on the interior than you are on the edge positions, at least from a proven perspective. We know Anthony, Skylar, and Lee Hunter can all go and play in this conference. We've seen Holmes do it at the Big 12 level. We've seen Hunter be a top 4 defensive lineman in the conference at this level. On the edge, I mean, you've seen Bailey be really good, but you've got 3 to 4 guys on the interior that you feel really good about. Most teams are looking for one. So
Right.
that's just going to be a humongous advantage, keeping those guys fresh.
And Z, that's a great point. I'm thinking back to this time last year where I was excited. I mean, the Dylan Spencer news sucked. The Duda Banks news sucked. The injury news to some of those guys, because I was excited about some of these guys coming in.
Yep.
And then you think back to Isaac Smith and like the game that he had against Ole Miss a couple years ago, and he could never just stay healthy. And so it was frustrating to see the injury bug bite this group so early on in 2024. But having some of those guys return, you mentioned Esters. I mean, some of these guys did good things for you. They're just not all conference type players, or at least weren't back in 2024. So your hope is that having some of those guys in the program again with the new additions, with the star-studded additions, is only going to make this group so deep and so effective and borderline unstoppable in the Big 12. That's the goal out of this. And I know these guys are focused and driven to want to make that happen.
For sure. It's crazy that David Bailey was the last addition, like kind of a cherry on top, because I feel like the line already would have been extreme, and then he got in the portal super late, and you added him like as a last minute addition. So that's just absurd that like probably one of the best transfers in the entire class for the nation was one of our last ads.
Mm-hmm.
And underrated piece about adding this, I mean, I know you had Isaac Smith transfer out, but he missed all of last year, or just wasn't super effective last year. You didn't really lose any of your young guys. Your 4-star edge rusher Cheeto Philly, your borderline rusher Spencer. Dylan Spencer was a 4-star. He stayed along. Eddie Smith stayed here. Charles Anderson. So your young guys stayed, which is usually when you bring in portal players, like we saw on the offensive line, you use Nick Fatigue, you lose Dylan Shaw. Didn't see that happen on the defensive side, which I think is really encouraging, one, for the development of those guys. But yeah, it's going to be, Brennan, when I think about the defense, it has to be the best unit on paper. I don't see any way that you say cornerbacks are better or safeties or linebackers. If it's not the best unit on the defense, what do you think that means for us? Is there any way that that's a good thing? Is that only a bad thing? I mean, what are your kind of thoughts there?
In my opinion, if it's not the best group on the defense, then the secondary has to be really good, because everything kind of falls from the defensive line. If you can pressure the quarterback, if you can create pressure, you don't have to cover as long. And you can maybe afford a blown coverage because David Bailey got to the quarterback in a couple seconds, and the middle linebackers as well don't have to. I mean, we saw how big a problem that was last year, was linebackers and coverage. It was borderline awful. And so to have to, like, if this group isn't as good as advertised, which I find hard to believe, I really do think these guys are going to be a dominant force, at least, especially in the Big 12. But if not, and if they're not as good as advertised, it puts a lot more pressure on the secondary. And so to me, it would be bad news for your defense because, and even though you brought some guys in and you've got some skill in the secondary too, it's just harder. There's the offense's skill position players. It's much tougher to cover than it is to get to the quarterback if you've got the guys that can do it. And so I would be nervous if we're watching them struggle, especially the first 3 weeks of the season, what that would mean for Big 12 play if they're not as effective. But again, some of these, Lee Hunter, proven all conference. David Bailey, proven all conference. Romello Height, proven guy. Anthony Holmes, you mentioned, has played in this conference, been effective at Houston. So this is not some freshman that you have hope develop. These are guys that have been there, done that. I have a hard time thinking they won't be top of the conference players, but they would be the pressure on the secondary if they're not.
Yeah, the other thing, when I've gone back and re-looked at some of these rosters, there were plenty of units in the Big 12 that had elite units. You've got to have the complementary pieces too. Like Kansas last year had 2 elite lockdown corners, and it didn't matter because their safeties were terrible. And their defensive line couldn't get pressure. And it's like even the best of the best cornerbacks, you cover for 3 to 4 seconds. That's really good. You get past that, and that's where it becomes a problem. And that's why I think as we get into some of these other positions, you'll see it's a comprehensive, or at least on paper, it looks comprehensive. It's not we just bandaged up our defensive line and we hope everything else is going to work. I think you added a lot of talent in some of these other areas that's really going to help complement that. If you have lockdown corners and good safeties and a good pass rush, good luck. That's how you build a solid defense.
And Clay, I mean, think about last year. Think about ACU. Like you made what's his name? Tom Cruise. Maverick McIver. Top Gun. Maverick, yeah. You made him Tom Cruise, yeah. I knew it was Maverick. I thought I was like, where am I going with this? You made him, look like an all world class quarterback back there, and because you couldn't even touch him. And I'm thinking of TCU, like some of these games that wins or losses, and if you could have applied pressure on the quarterback regularly and limited the amount of explosive plays, you're winning maybe one or two more games next year, and you're obviously beating ACU by a lot more. Hopefully, and so it's important. I mean, this group, I think the most pressure, I would say, obviously, you could almost asterisk quarterback because it's quarterback always has the most pressure. But outside of that, with the expectations coming into the year, this group probably has the most pressure on them. Is that fair to say?
For sure.
Yeah, pressure to perform and at like an elite level. Like we hope that our safeties are like good. We hope that this unit is elite. The expectation is significantly higher,
and it's higher within a national landscape too. Like if it was, hey, this unit has has the opportunity. Like we talk about Barron. Like could he be a top 4 or 5 guy in the Big 12? Possibly, right? He could. This group. No, we're putting you with the likes of Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson, and Penn State, and Notre Dame. That's the talent that we are grading you out to have on your front line. That's absurd. Yeah. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I thought I saw that. I'm like, this is a joke. I have never seen Texas Tech and defensive line top 5 anywhere, ever. It's crazy.
You can say this. It doesn't matter. Gabe Rivera, obviously really good. Tyree Wilson, obviously very good.
You have talent.
You've never put this much talent on a front 4 at the same time ever in your history. This will, on paper, now they could go out there and the scheme doesn't work and it blows up. That's very well in the range of outcomes. On paper, this is the most talented defensive line you've ever had, and it's not close.
For sure.
One thing that's scary to me, and I'm just speaking from a place of this has happened over summers and summers and summers the last decade, you get into, oh, this guy's already hurt. Oh, that guy got hurt in summer camp. Oh, by August 15th, he's out for the year. He needs surgery. And, you've got more depth this year, but it would still, health is such a factor here. It is across football. It's always a factor, but coming into the season healthy, like having all of these guys ready game 1 is so valuable. I almost wish you could just stick them in an ice chamber and wait until August 31st. Don't practice, David. You're good. Lee, you're good, bro. Like, just take it easy, brother. Like, it's fine, because we've seen that so much. Like, I don't know if it's a strength and conditioning coach. You have addressed that in past where it's like, hey, what's going on? Why is everyone getting hurt all the time? We can't afford that this summer. You still have to focus on, staying healthy and maintaining that over the course of 12 games. That's something that we need to be hopeful, that is able to actually happen this year, because this group has the special ability to be elite.
Yeah, and I don't think, as I've done my grades, I haven't gotten to Tech yet. I don't think there's going to be any interior units or edge unit that I think I'm going to rank higher than this unit. Now, I still got to finish. I got to finish TCU. I got to finish Utah. I got to finish some of those other teams. And I think Utah may have an interior that will challenge you a little bit, but that's just going to be wild if you are a top even 2 unit at both sides. Just having a top unit at either edge or interior defensive line is enough to be extremely disruptive. You think about, Cincinnati has one really good interior defensive lineman, and it like wrecks defense, like offenses. It's like you can have 3, and then you're also going to have a top flight edge. Like it should be an extremely disruptive force, and people should have a really hard time scheming around just your front 4.
Well, because who are you going to double? Like, it's like you're going to double David and then leave Romello in one-on-ones, Lee Hunter on the interior in one-on-ones, Gil Howard. It's a great problem to have for Texas Tech. And I do think that if we're looking back in December and we're going, hey, we're 11-1, we're 10-2, we're playing in Arlington, the defensive line will be a majority of the reason you got there. It won't happen without this group being elite, in my opinion.
I totally agree.
I 100% agree.
This has to be, because if this unit is just like top 5 in the Big 12 good, I don't think you have the defense to get to Arlington. I don't think you do.
Well, and if you did, or go ahead, Clay.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned earlier about like you need all units to be cohesive and good. Like one unit can't cover for the rest of them. But if there was one that like could raise the rest of the group, it is D-line. Like I feel like the Las Vegas Raiders have been doing that with their defense for like 3 years. They have no one else. But so, I agree. Like if our cornerbacks and our linebackers are just decent, this group can like carry us to a really good defense.
Yeah. And it's not even the sack numbers. It's can you make the quarterback feel uncomfortable, and that throws just a foot behind so that 10-yard play doesn't turn into a 40-yard play. Or, maybe it gets tipped and out centers. It's all those little ancillary things that help you a ton when your defensive line is good.
Yeah, it's a 3rd and 11 where you have to get the quarterback off the read. You put a little too much pressure where he forces the ball short of the
take a step
down
up.
marker. Got to take the check down. It's things like that we consistently give up as a defense over the course of our. I mean, gosh, since I've been born, really, like I've never really seen a dominant Texas Tech defense, and so that's something that the defensive line can assist in, even if they don't get to them. And it's important just to get stops.
Yeah. And the nice thing is to, some teams, and I can see why you could build this way, push all your chips in on your starters, get really, really good starters and just pray that you stay healthy. And that's like a really high variable outcome. It could be really, really good, could be really, really bad. The nice thing is your returning pieces are at least semi-competent. Like Duda Banks, very serviceable interior defensive lineman. Anthony Holmes, very serviceable. Nathan Tillman, very serviceable edge rusher. He'll be back in August. He's a little bit behind Reggie on his toe injury. But you've got other guys that it's not just, hey, we have these 5 dudes. Let's pray that they all stay healthy. And you will still pray for that. I'll pray for it every night. But you've got other guys that are going to be able to help you here. It won't just be these 5 guys get every single pressure and every single sack. That's where I like the floor a little bit more too, is most of your depth is like last year's starters, or the good ones from last year at least. Like Dylan Spencer is probably going to be 3rd string, and he was starting for you 2 years ago.
Right.
So,
and Clay, it's also, talking about the pressure it takes off of the offense, because so many times we go, okay, now we didn't score, we have to get a stop. Well, we're not getting a stop. Or you have to score on this possession because you're probably not getting a stop. And so what this allows too is, man, like if this group is so good, you're not as concerned if the offense goes through a stagnant period for a quarter and a half, 4 or 5 possessions, because you trust your defense will be able to continue to get the offense back on the field and limit scoring drives if this group is that good. And so I know it sounds like, man, the defensive line is the key to everything. And in a way, if you've got the dominant front 4, it can be like it is. You're able to minimize the pressure on every other position group if you can get to the quarterback and stop the run. Like that is something that works 99% of the time in successful football teams. Like I don't know of a team. Think about all the teams that have won championships: Georgia, Ohio State. All these guys had dominant players on the front of their defensive line. In the last, Alabama, Clemson, like all these great teams had 1st-round draft picks scattered all over their defensive line.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. And you would hope like that the line translates into not just stopping them and preventing scores, but also creating havoc, creating turnovers, and like
Hmm.
getting you short fields on offense. So you don't have to be as good on offense.
That's
You can
good. Yeah.
capitalize off of drives starting from, their 40-yard line or whatever. Because the defensive line is what's going to make that happen, not like
Yeah.
not a cornerback or something like that.
That's a
Z,
great point.
who needs to be the best player of this group?
I want to say Bailey, but I think you need Lee Hunter to be the best. But I think it will be Bailey. But if I had to pick anybody to overperform, like an interior defensive lineman is just so disruptive every single play. Like if you're trying to run it, interior defensive lineman, there's nothing you can do to kind of avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're passing, he's blowing everything up. Like you can scheme. You know how they used to do with Tyree Wilson, where you just put him in these like little hostage situations where it's like, all right, we're either going to hand it off if he takes the quarterback, if he goes with the quarterback, we'll dive. And you just kind of take him out of the play. You can't do that with an interior guy. Like they're just going to be involved on every single snap. So that would be. I think he needs to be really good. And I think if he's not as good, that kind of takes some of the fangs out of this defense. But that'd be my pick.
Clay?
Yeah, I'd probably agree. Although, I mean, if Bailey is as good as Tyree Wilson, I'm not complaining about that because you can just cause so much havoc from the edge position.
Yep.
But I agree that like an interior lineman, especially on like third and fourth and short, that's just so useful to have a guy up the middle that's like preventing an easy run up the middle for a first down.
Yeah, if David Bailey's a top 10 draft pick, then you're going to be fine. I remember the Tyree Wilson game. It might have been at TCU. It was on Fox. Like Joel Klatt and Gus were calling the game, and they were just hyping this guy up. And I think you only gave up. I mean, I don't remember the exact score, but it was low scoring, and that was the TCU team that went to the national championship game against Georgia. And Tyree Wilson almost single-handedly was limiting their offense. And so these types of guys are capable to both of your points of doing that against opposing quarterbacks. And there's probably not a 12-0 TCU on your schedule this year as well. And so it's something where you could really just, I don't know, man. I almost think this is the most exciting group for me on the whole team that I'm looking forward to watching this season. That includes offense. That includes quarterback. Like, I really think that defensive line might be the most interesting group for me coming into the year, which I don't think I've ever said.
You can see it when you play. It's like having a really good running game. When you can't stop the run on defense, there's just almost nothing you can do. It's like, okay, I guess we'll put everybody in the box and we'll try to limit it. That when you have a defensive line that is really, really hard to stop, it's just like that for the defensive side of the ball. You can't do long drop back passes. You can't run your basic, gap and zone scheme. You got to run all your gimmicky screens. You got to run your trick plays. You got to do all that kind of stuff if it truly is dominating and disrupting. And I think there's going to be some offensive lines that you can do that to this year. Now, what I think is really interesting about your schedule is I think the best offensive line you'll play all year will be your first Big 12 game. They've got two potential first-round tackles.
Which is Utah.
Utah, yep.
Yeah.
And you will go
At
to Utah. And that's going to be kind of, I'm sure I'm going to make bold, sweeping declarations after we crush Pine Bluff. But if you go into Utah and your offense and your defensive line is really, really effective, it is all downhill from there for that group.
You're chugging the Kool-Aid. It's over.
Because they bring back all the starters. They've got two guys that are mocked in between picks 20 and 40. It'll be the best. And if you're disruptive there, or you're even just mildly disruptive, you're going to be incredibly good for the rest of the season because that will be the best line that they face all year.
Yeah, to your point on that game, too, I actually love the fact that you go at Utah first Big 12 game. You get 3 home games. You get Oregon State as kind of the final tune-up. Then you're at Utah, one of the hardest places to play in the country, really. Going to Utah sucks. I mean, Caleb Williams had a hard time going to Utah. And it's like if you take care of that, to your point, and if you're able to be that physical with the team that is known for their physicality, and Kyle Whittingham always has his guys, even if they're struggling, they're always one of the most physical teams in college football. And you go manhandle them, dude, that is, hey, we're here. That is a statement. We're here. And I'm sure we'll be talking about this in September again, too. But that's an exciting game to have first for this group.
Yep.
I love that. I can't wait.
It'll be a huge, and it'll be one of those things too that when we talk and we preview it, obviously things are going to change. Guys are going to get hurt. Maybe Utah's bad. There'll be other things, but that's just going to be one of those games where you have to make sure that you understand what you're measuring yourself up against. That is not the Kansas starting right tackle. That is, 6'6", 335, future first round NFL tackle, coupled with his buddy on the other side that's going to be the exact same thing. Like, the context is going to be important there. And people are going to make that declaration like, well, look how good they were when they got into Big 12 play. It's like, dude, these are top 5 to 6 tackles in the country that you're going to be going against, however the game goes. So if you dominate, man, it is going to be lights out you're going to crush every other line you face.
Gosh, Clay, I'm too excited now, man. When is that game? What's the date of that? Should we go to that game?
I was just looking. It's September 20th.
Yeah.
Okay.
They actually have a tough schedule before us too. They play at UCLA and at Wyoming.
Yep.
Oh, well, we know good and well what.
Don't go to Laramie.
Don't go to Laramie. If you're a Utah fan and you find this podcast, change the schedule now. Do what you got to do. It's a guaranteed L. Do not go to Laramie.
They need to do some contact tracing the night before, and they need to opt out for COVID-related reasons.
Yeah, find a reason to get out of. Do what you got to do to not go to Laramie, Wyoming.
Don't make the trip.
Yeah. Golly, man. Can you remember? You remember watching that game?
I do not want to rehash this game. It was so great.
You're right. Let's just forget it. It was 2 years ago. I have a hard time letting things in my past go, but that one was one of the hardest things that was one of the hardest sporting events I've had to watch. Like in terms of like what is happening, And
it was so late too, so you had to just go straight to bed after that.
Yes. And it was Labor Day weekend, I think.
17-0 after all the hype, the offseason. I was like, wow, we're going to be so good.
Yeah, Miles Price was looking like Percy Harvin. You're like, oh, dude, Tyler Shuck.
Jaden York had that fade route, like that 28-yard fade route on the right side.
And Tyler Shuck was looking like a second-round quarterback. Yeah. I mean, it was crazy.
Everything changed when Jacob Rodriguez got his ankle stepped on going for the fumble. That killed both.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
dude, I'm so excited about Jacob Rodriguez this year. Not to get into different positions, but I feel like he's being
good look ahead.
Crazy slept on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, great look ahead. We'll get into Jacob. We can do linebackers next too. That'd be fun. Go Jacob, Ben, Curry. Who am I missing? I'm missing one. Ramirez, Bryce.
Ramirez.
Yeah, Bryce Ramirez.
Yeah, man. So, hey, defensive line though, this is a lot of fun. I know if you've listened, to this whole preview, you're going like, God, these guys are really hyping this up, and there's a reason we are. We are typically not the biggest hype men. We try to be as fair as possible here on the Broadway Shuffle, but this group could be elite, and that's just a fact. So it's going to be great. All right, man. Well, hey, quick little nuggets before we get to our Tommy Tuberbills of the week. I know we've got some good ones tonight. Basketball released that they will be playing at the American Airlines Center in Dallas against Arkansas. Thoughts on that? Quick thoughts. That is awesome. And then you've got LSU in Fort Worth, and you've got the Bahamas trip. So your non-con basketball schedule, Clay, has quickly turned into one of the top. I think you texted us. It went from one of the worst to one of the best pretty fast. This is going to be a fun, not to go too far ahead, but fun offseason, fun non-conference for the Texas Tech basketball team.
For sure. Yeah, this was long overdue to get some decent opponents on your non-con schedule. I think last year we were like over 300 in terms of the strength of our non-conference. Yep. And you should definitely be in like the top 25, I would guess, from this. I also like that we're playing in DFW twice, and the game against Arkansas, like those two fan bases definitely, not that we have like a rivalry, but they definitely don't like each other. There's a lot of Arkansas fans in Dallas as well as Tech. So it should be super fun. And then the other games, Duke. I love also the Illinois home and home. Duke. That's awesome.
You're going to
getting
Champaign,
a home game
right?
next year. Yeah. This year we'll go to Illinois, but then next year have the return game in Lubbock, which will be sick. But yeah, I'm super excited to watch all these games.
Dude, I mean, that is awesome.
Last year, your non-con was, let me think, it was you.
St. Joe's.
Let me see where, it ranked 305. Yeah, you lost to St. Joe's. You beat a terrible Syracuse team, and then you lost to A&M. That was you beat DePaul at home. That was like the best mark that you had.
We could have gotten away with it had we just beaten St. Joe's and A&M, because then we would have played Texas instead of Syracuse. And we probably would have bumped us up a seed line, but
you also got super fortunate. You scheduled some teams you thought were going to be terrible, like Northern Colorado, and they ended up being like a borderline top 100 team. Same with Wyoming, who ended up being like 180-ish. And then Lamar ended up being like top 150, and who's usually like in the 300s. So it could have been significantly worse than it actually ended up being.
So yeah, so you're getting Illinois, Duke, Arkansas, LSU, who's been horrible, but LSU still, and potentially Purdue in the Bahamas, and so
And Wake Forest.
and Wake Forest. So that is just, and that all that does is just help your potential seeding in March. So it's going to be a ton of fun, especially with Toppin back. Those games will be heavily nationally, focused as well, and be on big TV markets, which will be a lot of fun. So,
and we've never done, even with Beard, we never did schedules like this. You'd get the Duke MSG game, but even still, your non-con would not be that strong. This tells me that Grant thinks he has a really freaking good team. I think he's very confident in his squad.
I think, and I don't think that's just because of Toppin and Anderson. I think he loves what he's brought in with Atwell and Watts and these guys too. So that's going to be a lot of fun, man. We're actually raising money currently for the Bahamas trip. If you would like to, Clayton, it's going to cost a lot to get Clayton to ditch his sister's wedding. So if you are
GoFundMe's up.
Yeah, the GoFundMe. If you want to start one, get us to the Bahamas live show. We'll give you 24/7 access, but it's got to be tempting enough for Clayton to ditch his sister's wedding. So just keep that in mind as you're listening to the show, getting us to the Bahamas in November. So, all right, Z, let's get to. I'm actually. Shout out to Hayden and Carly. They actually asked me to MC that wedding. I don't know what that means, but they're trusting me with a microphone is all. And so that, and then Clayton obviously has got to be there
Mr.
too.
Confident. You just have to be the confident guy at the wedding. That's what it is.
So it'll be fun. Well,
I think they want you to do a stand-up comedy routine. That's what MC means.
I might need to practice here on the Broadway Shuffle. That would actually be really funny. Imagine putting Conrad in like a 5-minute bit of him having
would love nothing
of him
more.
having to do a stand-up special on YouTube in front of us, in front of all of our listeners. That might be the cringiest thing you could ever have anyone do.
We should really hold him hostage until he does a 5-minute routine. He can't talk about Barron. He gets muted by the host.
That's great. That is yeah. It's like around the horn. We should do an around the horn episode as well, where we get to mute each other based off stupid takes.
We need to bring some more some guests on that we could really argue with. But that would be great.
Yes. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, well, those are all fantastic ideas. And comment which ones you think we should do first. But we're gonna knock them all out. All right, let's end the show with our Tommy Tubervilles of the week. Clay, I know you've got a good one. You go first.
All right, I'll start it off. I actually kind of hate to pile on this fan base or this team because they're so tortured. Like, actually one of the saddest franchises in pro sports, I think. But my Tommy Tuberville of the week is the Washington Wizards. There was a report that I don't know if it came from them or from just a reporter, but it said the Wizards are willing to offer up some surprising names for the number 2 pick. And I don't know if the Wizards have looked at their roster recently, but there's not a single player on their team that would be a surprise that they were willing to trade that for Dylan Harper. And I would go so far as to say there's maybe like 2 players in their history that would be surprising that they would offer them up for the number 2 pick. So my Tommy Tuberville of the week is one of the worst franchises in the NBA, the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough, man. A lot of NBA teams make our Tommies. There's been a lot of NBA suckage lately, I guess, if you want to use a verb like that. See, what do you got?
I have 2, and these are both kind of in the same vein. The first is the Ayatollah of Iran. Just got absolutely obliterated last night. So shout out to the Ayatollah. And then in a similar vein, the Phoenix Suns turning Michael Bridges, Cam Johnson, 4 first-round picks, and a swap into Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and a late lottery pick in a terrible draft is one of the worst franchise asset maneuvering I think I've seen in the last 10 years. You had Kevin Durant on your roster, and you got Dylan Brooks in return. How is that something that we're excited about? So yeah, those are my 2 Tommyvilles of the week: Phoenix Suns and the Ayatollah.
That is.
Dude, I considered the Suns as well.
Yeah, that's tough.
That is the best Tommy Tuberville. I think you go Suns and Iran. That's hard to beat. Yeah. Man, my Tommy of the week is actually a guy named Tommy. And I hate this. I hate to do this to him because I love this guy. And I actually, kind of structure my hair after him. But Tommy Fleetwood, a very handsome British golfer. I love him to death. He's one of my favorite golfers on the planet. but he took a one-shot lead into the 18th hole at the Travelers Championship. He has won overseas plenty of times. He's been playing on the PGA Tour a while, never has won in America. And the dude three-putted and lost on the 18th hole, made a bogey, lost to Keegan Bradley, bogey 2 of his last 3. And I mean, dude, I just got to keep him accountable. Yeah, it's like you had a chance and you proved you're just not ready for the moment. And that's what the Tommy Tuberville is all about. So Tommy Fleetwood is my Tommy Tuberville of the week. It was a tough season.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it was tough, man. I was at the Open 2 years ago in Liverpool, followed him. I had really long hair at the time too, had my hat on, and I was called Tommy Fleetwood like all week. Like I feel like I'm a part of him. So it hurt my heart to see it happen, but got to keep Tommy accountable. So, all right, man. Well, hey, those are great, Tommy. The NBA, Iran, the Ayatollah, man, what a weekend. It's crazy.
Yep.
Should we just transition to a political podcast that closes?
Political / NBA.
Yeah, political NBA podcast to end the show. Any tech trivia for us, Z, as we're out here? Nothing this week.
No. It's Kool-Aid time. We're not doing trivia tonight.
Okay, Kool-Aid time, baby. Well, we'll be back on Thursday. We'll knock out linebackers on Thursday, and then we will see you guys next time on the Broadway Shuffle. Again, make sure to like this video and subscribe if you have not yet. We appreciate you guys being here. Shout out to all of our fans and our shufflers out there. We can't wait to see you guys this fall as football is just around the corner. Wreck 'em, and we'll see you next time.